Let's get stronger. Let's make DJ proud. I want you to come in close, even closer. You can get stronger at any age. I am such a passionate proponent. I proselytize getting stronger. No matter how old you are, no matter what life stage you're in, no matter what your athletic experience is. I was not an athlete growing up. I was completely allergic to exercise. I would literally forge notes to get out of gym class on my mom's medical pad. Super illegal. And yes, I did it anyway. I didn't learn how to swim until an adult because I skipped every single swim session. If you've never done a push-up, I guarantee I can teach you how to do 10 in a row and on 100 in a workout session. I guarantee it. Most people aren't weak because they can't get strong. They're weak because they don't know how to train. They're weak because they stop when the progress is invisible. 60% of American adults don't do any muscle strength training. That is like big tear. That's a Tupac tear coming down my face, okay? Today, all you need to know to get stronger, no more excuses, baby. I am gonna lay out exactly how I work out every single week or most weeks. The only concepts you need to know to get stronger, we're gonna demystify and uncomplicate some of these buzzwords that you're probably seeing on social media, and my number one rule for an effective training program, as well as a starter template. Do we have, oh, shit. I can't talk about this without Dwayne Johnson next to me. DJ, we're ready. He's front and center. We're gonna manifest a trip to the Iron Paradise right here on Project Swagger. Dwayne, you know how to get in contact with me. All right, let's talk about how I train. Let's get started with some of the terms and language that you might hear when talking about lifting and strength training. You'll hear these phrases often online or maybe in my Peloton classes. Compound lifts. That just means more than one muscle group is working at a time. For example, in a squat, you are hinging at multiple places of your body. Your core is bracing, right? So that's a lower body movement, but it's considered a compound lift rather than a bicep curl. That's a single joint movement, all right? So when multiple joints of the body are moving, then that's a compound lift. 1 RM, that's a 1 repetition max. That's the heaviest you could lift for that movement. I use my 1RMs to guide pretty much all of my strength training. So, for example, if I know I should be lifting 65% of my 1RM for 5 reps, then I'm going to know exactly what percentage that is for my back squat, for my bench press, and for my deadlift. And then there are adjacent movements where I'm ballparking it. So I know that my front squat should be within 20% of my back squat, and so on and so forth. As a new lifter, you are very likely not going to have these numbers, and that is where RPE, rate of perceived exertion, is really, really useful. Rate of perceived exertion is basically how hard it feels in your body in that moment on that day. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like the toughest, most hard in the paint thing you've ever done, and 1 is chilling, watching a rom-com, which we'll talk about, or, your favorite Hallmark movie. If you know, I love a Hallmark movie. But RPE is a great gauge of not only how hard you're working subjectively, but it's also a good match for how hard the efforts should feel. So if you're doing a training program and you're supposed to be working at an 8 out of 10, that means at the end of that set, you couldn't have really done more than 2 or 3 reps. If you finish a set of 10 and you're like, girl, I could have done 15, then it's not heavy enough. I like to keep my strength training RPE between a 7 and a 9. There are some scenarios where you might be doing higher volume, so your RPE would be less than that because you're achieving higher reps, so your total cumulative effect of training is going to be fatiguing in a different way. But usually the sweet spot is an 8 out of 10, 8 or 9 out of 10. And fun fact, my pregnant hustlers, you can safely, the ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, says that you can safely work to an 8.5 RPE if you were lifting and moving in similar ways before pregnancy. So I worked hella hard as a pregnant athlete. I had pregnancy gains. Like I actually PR'd my deadlift like the week my son was born, which is Surprising to me. It was surprising to my husband too. All right, so let's talk about strength versus hypertrophy. Strength, simply put, is asking your muscles to do more. Hypertrophy, simply put, is asking your muscles to grow more. So strength is about the function, the power output of your muscles, and hypertrophy is about the size of those muscles. Now, these are related concepts. Generally speaking, if your muscle is bigger, it's also going to get stronger, but it is possible to get stronger without putting on muscle size. The rep ranges, there are lots and lots of studies about what the optimal hypertrophy rep range is, what the optimal strength rep range is, so this is a super big generalization, but strength, you're going to be talking about 5-6 reps or less. And hypertrophy, you're really going for muscle failure. And there's really anything like 6 and above, all the way up to 30 reps for a set has seen to be effective for hypertrophy. But I really do believe that all challenging reps are good reps. And whether one needs to train to failure or whether you're training to controlled fatigue, I would say, listen, I want us to play the long game. I want us to be 90-something-year-old baddies. I want to deadlift my grandkids, okay? I want them to be like, gosh, abuela deadlifted me again on our play date. You know what I mean? Like body boundaries, yes, but like I'm going to lift you up, I'm going to deadlift you. So that, I think, goes more towards the controlled fatigue. The idea that you're getting within that sweet spot of 1 to 3 reps in reserve and being able to repeat that over decades. There is absolutely something to be said for training to failure. I mean, bodybuilders are the best at this, I think, in the world, and there are entire canons of research based on what I consider to be their art. I am not a bodybuilder, so there are a lot of specific avenues for that if you want to go down the hypertrophy route. But I like to think of functional strength. And then, like, the bonus is, yeah, look good, okay? That's the goal for me personally. And that's usually how the point of view that I use into my training programs at Peloton and so forth. So the most important concept that you are going to need to remember, whether you use one of my training programs or something else that you find online, progressive overload. Over time, some variable needs to change. The most obvious one for strength training is the load, is the resistance. Are you going from body weight to 5 pounds to 10 pounds to 15 pounds? That's progressive overload. Here's the caveat, though. That progress at some point is going to plateau. When you've been lifting for a while, and I think we've all experienced it after some point. In the beginning, you have newbie gains. You're like, wow, I just keep going up the weight rack. And at some point, you reach that upper threshold of capability. You're not stuck there, but you're going to have to work in that range by changing other variables than just going heavier and heavier and heavier ad infinitum forever. So for example, my single arm press that I did this week, it's been kind of sticky at 8 reps at a certain weight. And I wanted to progress this week, but I didn't think safely I could go up to, I think it was 40 pounds. So I said, all right, I'm going to keep the same weight I did last week, but I'm going to layer on more reps. I'm going to see if I can, instead of doing 8 reps this week, I'm going to see if I can do 10. And so therein, I changed a variable. So broadly speaking, progressive overload, you are changing the resistance, you are changing the rest, you are changing the volume, you're changing some variable to see if you can tax your muscles and your system harder. You are going to be repeating workouts. You're going to be repeating movements. This isn't about seeking the new fancy fitness thing on the block every single week just because you happen to get bored. Boredom is good. Repetition is good. When you marry repetition and consistency with progressive overload, you become a monster. And I say that with deep respect for my fellow monsters out there. So the progressive overload concept only works with consistency. It only works when you're comparing apples to apples. If you're doing something totally random every single week, that's going to be really hard to track. So over a 16-week period, I change up my training 4 weeks at a time. So for 4 weeks in a row, I'm pretty much doing the same exact workout with the exception of those tiny variables changing, but the format of the workout is exactly the same for 4 weeks. Deload week, I want to talk about though, and this relates also to recovery. Fitness is not going to just be this hockey stick where every single week you're adding more and more and more and more and more and more. You also have to let that pendulum swing down. And so a deload week that's super effective after a competition, it's super effective when you've tested your 1RMs or you've had a high volume week or really intense life moment. A deload week means you're still going through it, but maybe you're taking it all the way down to 50% of your 1RM, or you're slashing that volume by 20 or 30% intentionally. So you're able to throttle a little bit that intensity before building back up. And that undulation is exactly what we're talking about, and that's the long game that we're talking about too. It keeps our body adapting, and it keeps us from burning out and injury-free as well. Let's talk about the starter template. So you're like, okay, girl, I get it. I'm supposed to lift. Here's just a broad starter template. There are a lot of ways to approach strength training, and all I care is that you do it. But here's a starter. 3 days a week, 3 lifts per day, 3 to 5 sets per lift. That is a great rubric to get you started with the objective of progressive overload, repeating that same workout or series of workouts for a whole month, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe even 4 to 8 weeks. And then each week you're trying to progress some variable. Consistency plus progressive overload is the name of the strength training game. Now I'm going to zoom out and tell you exactly how I'm balancing lifting and other movement. Let's take you through my week. Generally speaking, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am lifting with a barbell. There is a main lift. Monday is usually some type of lower body, front squat, back squat. Wednesday is usually chest press, bench press. And then Friday is usually deadlift. And adjacent to those workouts, so like let's say that's going to be my main lift. That's going to be the primary goal of my workout. And then the second part of my workout, they're going to be accessory movements, single arm movements. So Monday, I did front squat. I did 3 sets of 65% of my 1RM for my front squat, paired with split squats, pretty heavy split squats, 3x10. And then the second part of my workout, I did single arm press, I did wood chops, and a single arm row. And then the last part of my workout, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is usually some type of VO2 max high intensity conditioning piece. And that might be anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. And that is the base of my workout pyramid. So no matter what my goals are, whether I have a race, a high rocks, a marathon on the horizon, I am hitting those lifts. But the cardio piece of it, so for example, I do about 5 hours of zone 2 cardio a week that's split across the bike and the tread. Zone 2, truly conversational, easy aerobic base building. And depending on my teaching schedule at Peloton, I might not do as much on my own on the bike. And I get asked a lot, no, my Peloton classes do not count as my workouts. They count towards my total week's volume. I consider it when I'm planning my workout schedule, but those are not my workouts. I almost always do my own training before I teach any Peloton class. It maintains my energy, my focus, and I'm a better instructor to you because I know exactly how it feels when I'm doing it on my own. All right, so I've got those 3 lifts a week. I've got those 5 hours of zone 2 cardio. And then depending on my goals, I've been in a high rock season for the last 18 months or so. So 2 days a week, I'm going to be doing high rock sessions. So one of those sessions is going to be 90 minutes. And then another session is going to be 45 to 60 minutes or so. And then somewhere in the week, I'm fitting in a longer run and mobility work. So I've been scheduling 1 day a week or 1 day every 10 days of a rest day. And on that rest day, I will hit mobility work and just get my steps in, really, really trying to focus on sleep and fuel. And those are going to be components, whether I'm in an intense training cycle or not. So that is a lot of movement. I work out and it's my job as well as my passion. So I recognize that not everybody's going to have that type of time commitment or appetite for doing that kind of thing. But here is what I want you to consider. You're touching weights or doing some type of body weight strength training 3 days a week. You are also doing a minimum of 150 minutes a week of cardio. That cardio isn't just walks and hikes. It's super important that you are incorporating some type of interval or HIIT work, even if it is within the realm of walking and hiking. So what would that look like? It would be like 60 seconds. You're really cooking. Walk, hike, jog, run, sprint, and then 60 seconds. You're pulling back, you're recovering. But you've got to get to that vigorous place where you are feeling like, I'd really rather not do this for another 60 seconds. The Norwegian protocol is something that a lot of folks have been doing lately, on social media. That is basically just a method that's been studied, a method of interval training that's been shown to be super effective. That's roughly 4 minutes on, 3 or 4 minutes off. And you can do that in almost any type of cardio modality. And that is really going to benefit your cardiovascular system, your heart health, your body composition. So you're hitting, I would like to say, 1 to 3 days a week, depending on, your level of athleticism, of that type of interval hit training. And making sure that you're recovering, especially for hormone health and women in perimenopause and menopause. And our need for recovery is going to change throughout different seasons of our life. I'm talking from new moms to menopause to, you're recovering from an injury, whatever the case may be. So acknowledge where you are and move from there. But roughly speaking, it's 3 days a week of lifting, 3 to 4 days a week of some type of cardiovascular stuff with 1 to 2 hit cherries on top. So let's start lifting those weights. I want you to tag Project Swagger. Let us know how it's going. Take us to your gym and let's see how strong we can get. Time to catch up on some voicemails.
Hi, Robin. My name's Haley, and my question for you is, how do you keep persevering through something when it seems like everything is lined up against you? I'm currently going through an MSN program, and I continue to be met with professors who underestimate my ability to be successful as a young nurse leader. I know my worth, but it's exhausting to be met with resistance time after time. How do you continue to be resilient in challenging situations?
Oh, that sounds so exhausting. It's so frustrating when people don't see you the way you see yourself. That is exhausting. And that's the truth. It's seeking out the people who see us more like we see ourselves. That's not always possible. Sometimes we just have to deal with the landscape that is in front of us. And I think that's critically important to develop practices that bring us back to ourselves. So it's like the fueling practice, the journaling practice, the movement practice, the sleep practice. And that sounds like, eye roll. Of course, Robin, I already know I should do that. But when we have less adaptation energy, when we are being criticized from the outside in, we need the things that anchor us and remind us of who we really are and what our aptitude and our capacity really is. And I have definitely been through seasons of that. I just left a meeting today that was like a rude awakening, where I had somebody say some things to me that they presented something to me that is not how I see myself. And I think it could have been delivered a little bit better. And I really had to take a moment when I came home and I journaled a little bit about it. And it was a way for me to process the emotion and be reminded that they're not actually holding up a mirror to me. They're holding up a mirror to themselves and talking through it. And that was a helpful reframe. And then sometimes we are in a season where we're just going to have to keep proving ourselves. And it sounds like you're in that season. And I think that you can do it. And it's the people who get frustrated by the environment that change the paradigm of the environment itself. And I like to think I'm one of those people. And you are too.
Hey, Robin. Would you like to share your meditation practice with us? What modality you use, when you do it, and also how you found that it's helped you since you've started the practice. Thanks.
Yeah, I love talking about this. So I am a huge proponent of meditation. I started meditating when I was still practicing law. Actually, a former lawyer at my law firm, Ben Tershin, was my meditation teacher. He taught me a Vedic meditation practice, which is, from what I understand, pretty similar to transcendental meditation. So I have my own personal mantra that I've never uttered to anybody. And that is my instrument, my tool for getting into that meditative state. I can drop into a meditative state in less than a minute. I've really practiced that ability to just drop in. Doesn't mean errant thoughts aren't going to come all the time. I think that's part of the practice. I know that's part of the practice. But it used to be, so I will say I was pretty good for 2 or 3 years, the 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon. Since motherhood, that has been much more challenging to achieve. Now I would say it's a much shorter timeline in the mornings, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes. And then before bed, I'm pretty good about recentering myself, doing some breath work. But I wouldn't say I've kind of moved away from that traditional Vedic practice. I would love to get back there. I just don't think that that's the season of life I'm in right now, and that's okay. But the breathwork piece of it, I know how liberated I feel, on how much lighter I feel energetically after that practice has been really helpful. And something that I've incorporated, which isn't exactly meditation, but I think it's adjacent, is non-sleep deep rest protocols, or yoga nidra. And that's kind of a body scan that is paired with breathwork and focused thinking. And I think that really, really helps with energy, especially in the afternoons. Thanks for your questions. As always, you can reach me at 1-877-ALL-SWAG. Welcome to a new segment of Project Swagger called Cutting Through the Noise. I'm going to wade through the wellness and fitness fads and buzzwords, sometimes nonsense. And I'm going to give you my hot take, what I am embracing and what I am saying, no, thank you, to. I think that it's really important for us to have honest conversations when we're in this age of abundant information to say, like, does that even really make sense? And sometimes it doesn't make any sense. So what we're talking about today is so pervasive, intermittent fasting. And my hot take is no, it is not for me. I don't think it's necessary for most people, especially women. I think that we need to be fueled and fed for our workouts and the energy that life requires. And often, real talk, I think that intermittent fasting is under eating in disguise. And I know people are going to be like, but girl, I lost X amount of weight. I'm in the best shape of my life. I've never felt better from intermittent fasting. Then keep doing it. Then keep doing it. I'm not in your kitchen. I'm not in your life. I'm not in your body. But I do think, generally speaking, it's a time window where we're allowed to feed. I think it takes away a little bit of that intuitive sense of what our energy levels are, how foods are making us feel. And my practice, right? So I generally eat with my kids at 5 or 6 at night, and then I'm not eating again until breakfast the following morning. So there is naturally a window when you're sleeping that you're not eating, and then of course is aiding your body in digestion, and on a cellular level, that's absolutely beneficial. And I think that there's even studies related to cancer prevention and abstaining from eating for certain windows of time, 10, 12 hours. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 18, 20-hour fasts, and you're trying to, jam in all your calories in a 4 or 6 hour, or even an 8-hour window. I think that for a high-performing, high-functioning, ambitious person isn't necessarily the way to go. And again, I know there's a lot of sensitivities around eating and how in some people's relationships with food. If you find something that, if IF works for you, you do it. But before you start to incorporate something so extreme, consider why and maybe find resources so you're doing it in a healthy way. It's a no for me, though. That's it for today on Project Swagger. For even more actionable takeaways, follow Project Swagger on Instagram and TikTok at Project Swagger. And that's also where I want you to tag me when you are in the gym this week. Let's get stronger. Let's make DJ proud.